Hare Krishna. As part of our Guru-tattva course, in this video we are presenting an interview with someone who has decades of experience both as a disciple, a śikṣā-guru, an instructing spiritual master, and the dīkṣā-guru, an initiating spiritual master. Our guest today is His Holiness Śrīla Śivarāma Swami Mahārāja, who is also my initiating spiritual master. Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for having accepted the invitation for this interview.
Hare Krishna, my pleasure.
Maharaj is of Hungarian origin. He joined the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in Montreal in 1973 and received initiation the same year from His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. Due to his studious nature, his serious commitment to studying scripture, and having the ability to help others, guide others on the spiritual path, he quickly became a mentor for other younger devotees, a śikṣā-guru, and he's been acting in the role of an initiating spiritual master since 1987. He's also an internationally acknowledged religious leader and has written 25 volumes of books and dozens of articles, and his target audience is mainly practitioners of Bhakti Yoga. In this discussion, we would like to ask him a few questions about his experiences as a disciple and as a spiritual master, and we would start off with the disciple aspect.
Okay.
Shastra emphasizes the importance of accepting a spiritual master and committing and surrendering to a guru. And my first question would be, what inspired for you to take that step, and what were your expectations with doing so?
You know, I started connecting with Krishna consciousness probably around 1970, 1969. And in that time, I appreciated the need for self-realization, for knowing who you were, and also part of knowing who you were meant to actually accept a teacher, accept a guru, someone who actually teaches you who you are in both a very basic sense, to be able to discriminate between the body and the soul, as well as in a more esoteric sense. So it's like asking, you know, why I decide to, you know, go to study at such and such teacher, because I went to school and there's teachers in the school. So now in this case there was only one teacher in the school, and that was my spiritual master, Śrīla Prabhupāda. So it's a matter of necessity to accept a spiritual master. In fact, scripture says tad vijnanam sagurum evam abhigacchit, that it's a obligatory step, that one is obliged in the same way as children are obliged to learn with a teacher. Similarly, novices are obliged to also learn with a spiritual teacher. And spiritual teacher means accepting a spiritual master. And that's a common characteristic of all serious spiritual seekers, that they will actually find out a guru and an authentic guru. I say sincere speakers because there are many seekers who think that they can figure it out themselves. That's like a 5-year-old figuring out how he's going to become a physicist all by himself. And that's not sincere. And the other is, unfortunately, the whole world is plagued with gurus who really should be doing nothing else other than sweeping floors. So they have no qualification for being a spiritual master. I was very fortunate in that I realized that actually my spiritual master was a sincere, authorized bona fide representative of the Supreme.
You mentioned the importance of a teacher, and even in material life we have experiences of teachers, but the level of commitment Shastra demands of someone on the path of yoga seems a bit extreme sometimes to those who are not so conversant with the depth of the guru-disciple relationship. The self-surrender, the spiritual master should be the life and soul of the disciple. One should be willing to sacrifice one's life for the sake of the guru. How to understand that level of commitment?
That's because, unfortunately, in our world today, people aren't educated to be human beings. And human means guru. If you don't have a guru, you're not a human being. So it's like people may not understand why soldiers sacrifice their lives in a battle, in a war, but that's why you're able to maintain the sanctity or the integrity of your country, is because certain people sacrifice their lives. And people should, even if they're not soldiers, but they should be able to appreciate the sacrifice that others make on their behalf. So it's a lack of education, and that's why people can't understand this whole idea that we have to accept being a servant, because in any case, servitude is forced upon us. You're either a servant of illusion, or you're a servant of God, and being a servant of God means being a servant of God's representative. Mm-hmm. People think that they're free, but they're not free. They have to get old, they have to get sick, they have to die, they have to enter into, what an unpleasant thing, enter into a womb. So this is slavery. What to speak of everything that we go through in life. And that type of servitude just continues to lead to more and more servitude, whereas this type of surrender leads to liberation. It leads to actual freedom.
So it seems that it's a mistaken idea that becoming the servant of a guru is like slavery. It's more a liberating experience.
It's liberating. This is how you become liberated. And it's a mistaken idea that I'm free and I'm going to become a servant. You just take a choice, being a slave and being a servant. So at least one is a rewarding experience, the other one is a thankless task. And that's what life is. It's slavery. Now, I may not think that it's slavery, but that's what illusion is called. Illusion is that I think I'm free when I'm actually a slave. So a cow is tethered to a peg and is walking around and grazing in a 10-meter radius, and he thinks he's free. But that's not freedom. Freedom is when there's no ropes. So learning how to become free means that, yes, I accept the teacher. And that's what education is about. So students don't go, at least they shouldn't go into school and start telling the teacher what to do. They're there to learn, and part of learning is submission, because a teacher is a person, and they're much more inclined to speak to someone who's submissive than someone who's challenging and arrogant. They just don't bother. So the dynamic of the exchange of knowledge is very much dependent upon the consciousness, or very much dependent upon the attitude between the teacher and the student. Same thing between parents and children. So parents are also teachers. So does a 2-year-old child have freedom? Does a 2-year-old child do whatever they want? They are absolute servants of their parents, and they have to do what they do. Why? But they're doing it for their good. Because give a 2-year-old child its head, let them do whatever they want, and they'll destroy themselves. So similarly, people in the world are literally speaking destroying themselves. And in the absence of spiritual guidance, we're lost in an ocean, in a realm of materialism that just gets worse and worse and worse.
Mm. Thank you for putting it so nicely that it's a rewarding experience being a disciple. That's
when you get the truth, then it's very rewarding. And since we're servants anyway, that is who we are. Then it's just being what you are. It's a natural thing to do. It's an unnatural thing. We use the word rebel. So rebelling, to be a rebel, is an unnatural situation. It's rising up against the way that things are. Our nature is that we are eternal servants of God. And when we rebel against that, then we suffer. That's why people want to come and do yoga. Why do you want yoga? Because you're not happy. Otherwise, what do you need yoga for?
From the very early days since you've joined ISKCON, you've been a missionary and a monk. And you've really given all your thoughts and energy to your spiritual master's mission. And here we're speaking to yoga instructors, who will be yoga instructors. And is it possible to be a good disciple even if someone maintains a job or material studies and other things in life, family? And
it depends how they go about doing that. So a disciple means someone who's following, and particularly following instructions. Spiritual master gives instructions on how to live, how to do sadhana, how to do regular spiritual practices, particularly how to the techniques of chanting mantra. So as long as, and now what you said puts things in the context of lifestyle, as long as the lifestyle falls within the boundaries that facilitate the spiritual evolution and the spiritual development, then one can be a good disciple. But that becomes a restrictive and a limiting lifestyle, at least limiting from the many excesses that are going on in the world around us. It's not limiting in terms of personal freedoms or personal expression, but it means things like no intoxicants, not being, having a vegetarian eating habits and so on, plant-based. So these are some very basic things. And then of course, what type of job do you do? There are, boundaries in which you could say jobs are sort of neutral. But ultimately the issue is that you judge a thing by its result. Are you making spiritual progress? And one will be making spiritual progress regardless of whether one is a monk or whether one is working outside or has their own business. It depends on how one lives.
So it is possible that the spiritual master is the life and soul of a disciple, even if they have some aspects of worldly life.
If he's the life and soul, then he's the life and soul. So if this is the person for whom I live and by whose guidance and instruction I live, where I am, what I do becomes a detail.
Thank you. The next question is, you're an exemplary disciple of your spiritual master, and what is your main focus in attempting to be an ideal disciple?
Life and soul. That was a phrase that Prabhupada used. It's not sort of common phrase nowadays, but I guess it must have been. That, one lives to please someone else. Generally, that's how people live. People live to please loved ones. You please people whom you love. So life and soul means, who do I love the most? There are many people I may love, but here's the person I love the most. Why do I love somebody the most? Because that's the person I get the most from. Mm-hmm. And not even the most, because most is sort of a quantitative thing, but actually there's the qualitative aspect, that I actually get something that's eternal. Because I may get a lot of things from people in the world, but what I get from them is temporary. So you can get so many things, but those things come, and then they go, and even that person comes and goes. But the spiritual master has an eternal relationship with the disciple, and what you're getting is eternal, and it's also the truth. So we may get a lot of untruths, but that's not something worth being loving for. But when you're getting the truth, and as they say in the court of law, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, then that becomes a very wonderful thing. And that's the character and the characteristic of the spiritual master, is that he only speaks the truth, and actually is the embodiment of truth. Because God is the truth. Mm. So when you're receiving, and now we're not talking about relative truths like, I don't know, snow is white, but we're talking about absolute truth, such as I'm not this body, or that the soul is eternal servant of God, or that God is the supreme person, the supreme personality of Godhead. So these are absolute truths. They're not subject to opinions, votes, etc. It's the way things are.
So can we say that the main focus is gratitude and appreciation of what we're getting, to maintain that attitude of gratitude?
Yes. That we appreciate what we get is one thing, and that's sort of a preliminary stage. What's the relationship between parents and children? Why do children love their parents? Well, because of what I've gotten from them. That's the business aspect. But the other is, well, why? Why have I gotten these things from them? And it's because they love me. Mm. So why do I love them? Because they love me. Mm. So why do I love my spiritual master? Because he loves me. Mm. And therefore he gives me these things.
Wonderful. Thank you. Could you please speak about the challenges in discipleship in general and in your personal life?
Well, my experience of both those who are my peers as well as successive generations of disciples, the main challenges in our world today is actually sticking to vows. Mm. You get married, you make a vow of marriage. Nowadays, the majority of people divorce once, twice. Well, what was the use of a vow? So vows are broken in a society where the concept of being a gentleman and a gentle lady no longer exists. Mm. So honest people they keep their vows. And that's as simple as that. Nowadays, truth is a real flexible commodity, and so you can bend it and twist it this way and that way. Court of law is a good place where truth gets really bent in a lot of different shapes. It gets bent out of shape. So that becomes one of the major challenges for disciples, is to actually stick to vows. Now, particularly I'm speaking about vows of initiation, which means commitment to sadhana, commitment to a certain regulative spiritual practice, vows in terms of sticking to the do's and do nots of Krishna consciousness. In the world that we live in, where, well, of course, no one's going to criticize you for deciding that, you know, you didn't want to be a Hare Krishna. So, or that, you know, you're not strict in your sadhana, in your spiritual practice. And everyone around us is lax and free with what the truth is, with what their vows are. So it's not an atmosphere that reinforces honesty and integrity. That becomes one of the major challenges. And of course the other is that accepting a guru is accepting a process. And a guru gives you the instruments to learn, but he's not someone who's there, you know, he's not a tutor who's sitting by your side 8 hours a day teaching you. So when you don't take the instruments that he's given for learning and apply them, as well as the texts, and you don't study them, then you stagnate. Then you don't move forward. And usually, when you don't move forward, that means you move backwards.
Have you ever had any challenges in being a disciple in your personal life?
In these things, no. I thought about that when you gave me these questions, what particular challenge I've had. I've neither ever doubted the philosophy or compromised the principles or thought twice about my spiritual master's authenticity. And I think I went through that before I entered the commitment. And that's what people should do. They should first be very clear about what it is that they're getting involved in, and whatever doubts they may have should be answered then, so that once you get in, it's like once you get in the army, there's no time for doubts on the battlefield. So you've got to keep your eyes out. So similarly, yeah, there's no time for doubts at this stage.
You're a dīkṣā disciple of Śrīla Prabhupāda, and his followers, second generation devotees from then on, we're all śikṣā disciples of Śrīla Prabhupāda. And his instructions have such a huge volume. He left us so many books and lectures, and he gave so many instructions. Could it be a challenge to be able to follow everything that Śrīla Prabhupāda said? Even just knowing everything he said seems to be a challenge.
Depends what your priorities are. You're living in a world today where, I mean, in my average year of university studies, I had more books than all the books I've got now I'm supposed to study. So if people can dedicate themselves to so much, excuse the language, trash, for an average of 10, 12, 15 years of education, and they really go through a lot of information, And all that information is only about one thing. It's about eating. How are you going to feed yourself? But, you know, the birds, the animals, they don't go to school, they don't read any books, and they manage to feed themselves, although they do it in different circumstances than we do. On the other hand, their feeding themselves doesn't destroy the world, whereas ours does, and destroys ourselves as well. So no, there's, that was one of the wonderful things that Prabhupada did, is the Vedic literature, which is unlimited, really speaking. You could say hundreds of thousands of texts. It's unlimited knowledge. He's given the essence of that basically in 4 books, that anyone who makes an equal effort that they make to learn how to become a materialist who's going to struggle like a donkey through life only to die, this gives you the opportunity to live forever. So if you can study a lot of books just to die, why not study less books to live?
Usually when we go to school, then we are full-time students, but many devotees join later while having other responsibilities, and sometimes time is a challenge.
Yes, it is. It is, because we have so many different other obligations. That's why it's good when you're young, and our culture, by our culture meaning the culture of yoga, is komarat achara pragya dharmat bhagavata iha komara. When you're kumar, when you're 5-6 years old, that's when it should start. In other words, this is what you should be studying. Well, then I don't have time for the other things. Well, that's just the idea. You shouldn't have time for all the other things. Keep life simple, keep life basic. But what do you do when you do? When you've already got so many commitments, when you've got a home, you've got a family, you've got a job, you can't give them up, so you don't. Stand istita, just stay where you are. But there isn't that much time, but you have to budget your time. You've got to scrap sports, scrap television, scrap wasting your time on internet, going to pubs, and all of these things, and then all of a sudden you're going to find lots and lots of time.
Thank you. Due to the limits of time, we move on to the other topic of being a spiritual master. You've been in the role of a teacher and the śikṣā-guru for almost 5 decades, and have been an official initiating spiritual master in ISKCON, a dīkṣā-guru, for over 30 years. So this question I want to ask has 3 parts. I'm going to read them all, and then we could go through them one by one.
Yeah, one at a time.
So, what inspired you to take on the role of guru? The second is, what were your expectations? And the third is, what is the reality? So the first part of the question is, what inspired you to take on the role of guru, both shiksha and dīkṣā-guru?
The modern day, not modern, but sort of the medieval day inaugurator of our Krishna consciousness movement is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's an incarnation of Krishna, and he introduced the public chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So he had a vision in which that chanting would go all over the world, that it wasn't just limited to a certain place or just to India. So he says, Amara Agya Guru. He says, now I want you all to be guru. So that was his order. On that basis, since then, the tradition has been that disciples accept the responsibility of being a spiritual master, to spread Krishna consciousness. And when you want to give transcendental knowledge to the whole world, then you require lots of spiritual masters, and you require spiritual masters in Russia, Africa, China, everywhere, Hungary. So people need to be both qualified to take that role and inspired to do that. And that was part of the function that Śrīla Prabhupāda, my spiritual master, achieved in circling the globe 12 times, is he wanted to train gurus. People who would continue that legacy, continue that tradition, and that they would also then train others who would train others and who would train others. That's part of education. Teachers, they'll keep an eye out in the classroom for who's a potential teacher. Because the educational institutions need to perpetuate themselves, so you have to continually find qualified teachers. So Lord Chaitanya asked that we become guru, and then Śrīla Prabhupāda repeatedly said, yes, you must all become guru, you must all become spiritual master. So I took it that this was my duty to do this. As we'll discuss, it's not a role that a Vaishnav or a yogi likes to do from a personal point of view. It conflicts a little with some of the aspects of personal development.
You mentioned that it is natural, and even in the material world, when we learn something, we like to pass it on to others who are interested in the same subject matter. But we have a difference between being a śikṣā-guru and a dīkṣā-guru. So you were teaching, giving classes and mentoring others from your early days. But there was one point in your life when you committed to being an initiating spiritual master. What's the difference there, and what inspired you to take that step to not just be a śikṣā-guru, but also to be a dīkṣā-guru to others?
In one sense, there's no difference between śikṣā and dīkṣā-guru. The functions vary. Śikṣā means instruction, spiritual guidance, which may vary in depth according to the level of realization or advancement of the guru. Dīkṣā means that in addition to those, the dīkṣā-guru also passes on the dīkṣā mantras, or mantras of initiation, which are actually the sound form of transcendence, and teaches the science of actually chanting. And that's something that comes down in disciplic succession, which means going back, spiritual master, chain of disciple and spiritual master that goes back to Krishna 5,000 years ago. Aside from that, there's no real difference in terms of function. There is somewhat difference in terms of also formality, in that the relationship between, and this is something that you've asked about and touched on, the relationship between the disciple and the dīkṣā-guru also is one in which the mood of servant and master is taught, practiced, and cultivated. So the etiquette of service and worship. So sākṣāt haritvena samasta sastya, that how do I learn how to worship God? Well, God's not available to me, so how do I learn how to worship Him in a practical day-to-day context? So the dīkṣā-guru is meant to be the embodiment of that same divinity, and therefore a disciple is taught to worship God by worshiping the spiritual master. So sākṣāt hari, which means as good as God. He's not God, he's God's representative. But the example is just like an embassy. So in any capital city, you got embassies from countries all over the world. That embassy and the ambassador is given the same respect as the country which is far away, and the prime minister or president of that country. And that prime minister or that country will expect that respect is shown, and when that respect is not shown, then that's considered to be a breach of relationships. So how to serve God is part of the active dynamic between the dīkṣā-guru and the disciple.
And why did you take that step then in 1987? What inspired you to take on this other role?
By etiquette, a disciple doesn't accept disciples in the presence of their spiritual master. Generally speaking, that's the practice. So that's why we didn't do it when my spiritual master was physically present. I really didn't. I tried to avoid it for obvious reasons, and the other because one doesn't never really feels ready or qualified.
Mm-hmm. So in '87, something happened that moved you towards this step?
I got enough message, enough impetus that I thought that I was getting a direction from Krishna, from my spiritual master, that now you should do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the basis of that. So one is the general that yes, everyone should do, just like, I don't know, every boy and every girl should get married, but there's a certain stage at which that happens when circumstances and conditions become right. And then that's when that commitment takes place. So you take on that responsibility.
Currently you have 800 initiated disciples, and
Krishna.
there are 230 devotees waiting in line as aspiring disciples, and you have Shiksha disciples also all over the world. Is there a difference in your relationship with your dīkṣā disciples and your Shiksha disciples?
I have many. It's an individual relationship. Does a father have the same relationship with all his children? Depends on the child. So it's a mutual affair, and so I can say that sometimes I may have much better, much more meaningful and productive relationship with a Shiksha disciple than I have with a dīkṣā disciple, or it may be vice versa. It just really depends. Does are the channels open for transcendental knowledge to flow? And that's so. It's a issue of receptivity. It's not just an official vow. It's a consciousness dependent process. The consciousness has to be there on part of the guru. If you have a reservoir and there's no water in it, then it's not going to pass on water to, I don't know, the village downstream. So then there's nothing in the pipes. So the reservoir has to be full, and those who are receiving, the receivers, they have to be open. And if they're not open and there are different things that can stand in the way, then then at best you get information. But information and transcendental knowledge are different things. So there's an element, for instance, what we call, and it's not novel to our Christian world, grace, mercy. So that knowledge becomes realized, becomes actuated within the heart by mercy, by grace, by divine grace. And that grace comes as a consequence of a certain type of conduct or behavior. Tadvidi paripatena pariprashnena sevaya. So Krishna gives those conditions, what it requires to actually be what's a good student. A lot of kids sitting in class, but who's a good student? So, you know, when someone's sitting upright, their eyes are wide open and they're just riveted, then the teacher's looking at that person. They're not looking at the people who are fiddling around and talking to each other. And to them, the same message, the same teaching, it may be algebra, geography, whatever, it'll get lost. And to them, it will become valid. And why? Because there's a transmission of knowledge, but there's also a transmission of will to actually comprehend that knowledge.
So it seems that it's very much up to the disciple what he or she makes of the relationship. What she's getting is really based on the right attitude and approach.
The disciple has to be qualified, the guru has to be qualified. Both, then if they're both potent, then it becomes a very potent combination. If one's not good and the other's not good, then it doesn't work. So you got to have a good teacher. Otherwise, if the teacher's not good, everyone falls asleep in class. And that's one of the characteristics or the very important qualities of what guru means, is that guru is not just someone who's assimilated knowledge, but they have to actually apanyachari koriya prachara. They have to live by what they teach. They have to be the embodiment of what they teach. So otherwise, a teacher, someone who's teaching some particular subject, but they have wanton ways and live a very questionable life, is not a teacher. Is not a teacher because the student will rightly ask, what's the result of learning what you have to give? And if learning what you have to give results in being a person like you, well, why would I want to be like you? Therefore, why do students want to study? So over the last few generations, especially, even in my generation, it was quite good. But after that, there's been a real revolution in the classroom. Students are not, they're not interested. Why? One of the reasons is because what they see the teachers are. The teachers are not, of course, and that's not everybody, but in many cases, the teachers are not exemplary of what real quality education and quality life is about. They're not necessarily good people. Well, if they're not good, why should the student be good? And if neither the teacher's good or the student's good, then there's not going to be. And so the level of education or the level of learning standards is going down and down and down in the Western world. Except in those educational institutions where they're very strict, where either you do this or you're out.
Going back to the initial questions, when you did take on the role of becoming a dīkṣā-guru, what were your expectations and what is the reality?
I didn't have so many expectations. Probably probably it's a more grueling and difficult thing than I thought, and more of a personally and emotionally draining. Like you said, 800 disciples, and that sort of has to come to an end at a certain point, because how many students can anyone teach? And a teacher needs to keep a certain degree of insulation between him and the student. So it's quite an interesting dynamic. You have to have a personal connection. But if you're too personal and too involved, you can't be involved in 800 people's lives. Otherwise you become a psychological mess. So, because unfortunately many people, especially more and more in the world today, are very, very disturbed. So one has to keep a certain distance from that level of disturbance, but then you can't stay too distant. Mm-hmm. So knowing what's a healthy distance, and when you get close, especially, of course, when you see, we go back to originally when you were asking about what are the challenges of being a disciple, when you see that people have become so fortunate that they come to the threshold of transcendence. They come to the doorway of reality, and then they turn back. So that's the most sort of discouraging thing. Because it's such an unfortunate thing for them. Here is not, it isn't just that someone decided to go from, Kundalini Yoga to Hatha Yoga. Kundalini Yoga, Hatha Yoga is about health. You want to be healthy this way, you want to be healthy that way. But this is about getting from illusion into reality, and there's only one door that gets you through that, and that's the door of bhakti. So anasteva, you don't get out of this illusion of material life any other way. And then to fall back or turn back, then it's painful to see that. It's just like, for parents, it's painful to see that a child becomes, who knows, some kind of delinquent or a thief or wasting their life, drug addict. So, same thing like that. And then when you're, even if there's a lower percentage of people who do that, but when you start talking about under the hundreds, then it starts to become many. Many individuals. And that's something I don't think you can prepare for. In other words, have expectations for or prepare. It's, can you prepare for parenthood? You've never been a parent. How do you know what parenthood is? So it's only when it happens do you know, and it can be either very rewarding or it can be disappointing, depending on how things go. So you can't really quite plan for this until you do it.
Understandable, thank you. That example is very clear.
Yeah, and that's why actually Lord Chaitanya said, Bahu Shishya Karibe. So Lord Chaitanya, okay, you have to be a guru, just don't take too many disciples.
It's also said that it's important to have a living guru in our lives. And there are not that many, even in ISKCON, not that many initiating spiritual masters, and we see that most of them have hundreds or even thousands of disciples. And the level of personal interaction is often quite limited. So how to understand that there is a need for having a living guru in our lives with personal guidance, but the access is very limited?
Modern technology facilitates that. Video, internet, Zoom, audio. So all of these are means by which that process of general education can take place. The method of individual education, yes, is limited. We do need many gurus, and therefore the dīkṣā-gurus can't serve all that function. That's why śikṣā-guru is an important thing. For instance, why here in Hungary we have, and it's not just here in Hungary but elsewhere, we have a counselor system where initiates are, it's a requirement that they have a counselor in spirit who's also acts in a position of a śikṣā-guru, a spiritual guide who can guide them forward in their spiritual life day to day, just because it becomes physically impossible to become one-on-one teacher for such number of disciples. But it's the duty of the dīkṣā-guru to ensure that some system is there. Otherwise they should stop. Because the responsibility is to increase. My field of, say, initiation is Hungary and the UK. Outside of that, it's hardly minimal that I have any initiates, and those are the two places where I travel. So I go there, I go here, and I've really tried to refrain from being involved in others in other parts of the world, because when am I ever going to meet them in person? Or even if I do, it's only going to be for a short period of time. So, but this is the beginning, and that's why we need many gurus. So, in Prabhupada's words, we need millions of gurus. Because you got billions of people, you need millions of gurus.
Moving on to the next question. How did you deal initially with awe and veneration that comes with being a guru, and how have things developed over time? The spiritual master is to be respected like God.
I mentioned that in terms of the natural development, the psychology of a Vaishnava, of a yogi, but more than Vaishnava, yogis tend to be proud. One of the qualities of Vaishnavas is to become humble. Is that is humility, amanina, manadina, offer respect to everyone, don't expect respect from anybody. So that really conflicts with this thing that, all right now, but you have to accept this position where not only you just accepting some level of respect, but it's supposed to be as good as God. And of course, even that's, has its limits. Institutionally, in ISKCON, we restrict what that means, what it means to accept, for a dīkṣā-guru to accept worship. But still, having others bow down to you, saying words of praise, that's unnatural. And it's unwanted. But that's what duty is. You do something that you don't want to do. Does a soldier like going out and killing people? Hopefully not. But still, you may have to do it for your country. So, Amar Agya Guru. So it's Lord Chaitanya's order. He says, I'm giving you the order, you should become Guru. Then we accept that, because that's more important than this. And these other qualities we are convinced will develop by Lord Chaitanya's grace if we do that service. That's something you can't get used to. That's always there. So, In one sense, you get used to it because you get used to anything happening, but it never becomes natural.
Mm-hmm. And the next question connects to this, that Guru-tattva is a mysterious thing, and just this idea, I don't know how psychologically you deal with this idea of being sākṣāt Hari, being in that tattva and being seen as that tattva, as someone who is actually a manifestation of God.
If I'm following my spiritual master, then it's not a problem. So one piece of electric wire is connected to the electric wire. The electric wire doesn't have to make any effort for the electricity to flow. All it has to do is be connected. So it's electrifying. The wire didn't do anything to be electrifying. It's just connected. So when it becomes disconnected, then the electricity stops to flow. So divinity flows if you're connected, and connected means following, strictly following. So if one is a strict follower, then it flows. It's not really something you have to do. Live wire. The wire isn't live, it isn't hopping around and dancing or anything. We say it's live because the electricity is flowing. But it's actually just as dead as the other, so there's no real difference. Similarly, there's no real difference in the person. It's a question of following. And since a disciple is someone who strictly follows anyway, I'm not doing any different than I did 40 years ago. I followed my spiritual master then, I'm not following him in order to be a guru. I'm following because that's what I'm supposed to do as a disciple. So a disciple is sākṣāt Hari, and if a disciple isn't sākṣāt Hari, what is he? If you're not as good as God, then how can you be a disciple? So tattva, everybody's a tattva. You're a guru-tattva, you're a jiva-tattva, you're in maya-tattva. So yes, we're all a tattva, we're all defined by a certain type of philosophical concept. But those philosophical contexts are different ways of looking at something that's actually always there. In other words, if someone is a yogi, if someone is a devotee, then it's following is always there. And you're always a guru. It's just that here you're declared to be a guru, and here you're not. What's the difference between the prime minister and the street sweeper? They're both citizens. They both have the same rights. Now, and they were expected to follow the same laws. So they're living the same way, but at some point, for some reason, this person is appointed with that duty, but from the point of view of constitution, from the point of view of right, they're equal citizens.
It seems that what you're saying is that being a spiritual, it's not a personality cult, but it's based on the connection to the disciplic succession, that someone's very valuable and is in that position.
Yes, it's not, the person is there, but I'm worshiping God through this person. And he's worshiping his guru, who's worshiping his guru. It's like I'm looking through these glasses. Actually, my awareness is of you wearing glasses. I'm not aware of my glasses. So similarly, the relationship with God is a direct relationship through the medium of the spiritual master and his spiritual master and his spiritual master. So like a telescope, which has many, many lenses, but you don't see any of them. What you see is at the end of the telescope, either the moon or some stars or whatever you're looking at. So no, it's not a cult of personality. It's the personality is the supreme personality, is Krishna.
Guru Maharaj, who are your role model teachers other than your dīkṣā-guru, Śrīla Prabhupāda?
We have my spiritual master has his spiritual master, who has his spiritual master, has his spiritual master. So evam parampara prapta, this is called parampara. This is the disciplic succession that we'd mentioned. And in that disciplic succession, iha mahabhagavata bhara. These are all Mahabhagavatas. These are all extraordinarily self-realized personalities. So in one sense they are all, but amongst them some are very special, like Rupa Goswami, who is the main disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then other members of that disciplic line, like Bhaktivedanta Thakur, who is the grand spiritual master of Śrīla Prabhupāda. They're role models in the sense of their achievements, their vision. Rupa Goswami sort of formulated Lord Chaitanya's vision, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's idea of giving Krishna consciousness, or the Hare Krishna mantra, to the world into a real form, into an institutional form, although there weren't really institutions at that time. This was in the 16th century. But he gave it substance, gave it form. Bhaktivedanta Thakur, who was just in the late 19th century and early 20th century, he began to actually fulfill that mission, that vision, by setting up different venues for distributing Krishna consciousness, especially in West Bengal, but also he sent his books to different places in Canada and in the United Kingdom, to universities. And then his son, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's spiritual master, he's the one who actually then started 108 temples throughout India, and then he started to send his disciples to Germany, the United Kingdom, and then to Asia. They weren't very successful, but they also sort of gave a root or foundation to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So these are all real role models.
Anyone contemporary, living now, who are teachers who inspire you to teach?
I have my peers, my god brothers, my god sisters, who are inspirational in different ways. Some of whom I've known ever since the first days of Krishna consciousness, and then who we've shared many things over the years, and they're really instrumental in my identity in that sense, because my relationship with disciples is much different than relationship with peers. So with peers, you're no longer sākṣāt Hari. So that type of balancing also needs to be there, and it's very important. So to always be relating with people who deal with you in a relationship of a superior, you need a type of peer relationship or even a subordinate relationship. Subordinate relationship is a little hard to find, especially when you're in your 70s, and when, for instance, your spiritual master is no longer physically present. But that really sort of anchors you down and keeps you safe, and it gives facility to be able to exchange with others on a level that you can't necessarily exchange with followers.
Mm-hmm. What suggestions would you give teachers for motivating students?
Tell them the truth, which means you not have to know the truth. If you don't know the truth, you can't tell them. There's a lot of people there are a lot of motivational speakers out there. Why do they have to be motivational speakers? Because they're not speaking the truth. So you have to keep motivating people. If you tell people the truth is motivating. Mm-hmm. So when people hear the truth, then it awakens them from within, and they actually realize, yes, this is what I'm looking for, this is what life's about. Mm. So the truth will motivate people, it will inspire them to do extraordinary things that otherwise they wouldn't think themselves capable of doing, or others wouldn't think themselves capable of doing, because the truth is empowering. Mm. It's the reality. It's liberating. So George Haas said, "The truth will set you free." So it's a fact. The truth is liberating. You get to cast off different shackles, and you become inspired. Otherwise, you can learn a lot of tricks about inspiring people, but if you inspiring them about illusion, then what's the use? Mm. So primary thing is that teacher means you have to know the truth.
Sounds very simple.
It's very simple, because the truth is only one. There's only one truth, and that truth is Krishna. Mm. So there may be a lot of opinions about what the truth is, but that doesn't make for reality. Mm. And especially those who study yoga, where does yoga come from? Yoga comes from the Vedas. Study the Vedas. So what's the goal of Vedas? Vedashisa veraham eva vedya. So Bhagavad Gita, which is really the handbook of yoga. And Krishna very clearly says, I'm the goal of the Vedas. He says, by all the Vedas, I'm to be known. Which means that yoga, which comes from the Vedas, and the purpose of the Vedas and the purpose of yoga is to know Krishna. So when yoga teachers are giving that information, and of course this is what we teach here in Bhakti. We don't just teach asanas and so on and techniques, but we actually teach the underlying message and purpose of yoga. And the purpose of yoga is to connect with the Supreme, and the Supreme isn't some vague energy. The Supreme is the Supreme Person. Mm. So when you help people connect with the Supreme Person, they become inspired.
I only have two more questions. One is how to balance strictness and leniency in being a teacher. How do you balance correction and appreciation while guiding your disciples?
There was a famous moralist, Chanakya Pandit, who said that disciples and sons should be dealt with very strictly. This word disciple comes from the word discipline, so it's connected to the concept of discipline, and discipline is you do it. I like it, don't like it, you do it. you're in the army now. You like it, you don't like it. Once you signed up, you got to do it. I didn't know I had to get up early in the morning. Well, it's too late now. You're here. You got to get up. So inspire me. And we're not inspiring you. You just get up. So chickens can get up. You can get up. But there is, obviously, because education means inspiring, and the recognizing or the recognition of achievement and progress also has to be there. And so both of those things are there. But I didn't like the word balance, because balance means that one thing balances the others off, rather that they're two separate things. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a balance. One is that there's strictness, and then the other one is that there's appreciation and the human touch, that this is more than just an army. This is actually about developing love. In army, you're not there about developing love. Here, we're about developing love. And love means reciprocation. And it means loving reciprocation. It means human and personal reciprocation. So that's there, but it goes parallel with this. It isn't that, well, if you get too much of this, then let me give you some of this. Mm-hmm. But rather that both of those things are there, and that's what we need to actually really keep in mind, that all of these rules and regulations that I talk about, all of this discipline, it's ultimately all about becoming lovers of God. And if you love somebody, you don't need any rules, because you always do the right thing anyway. But to learn how to love, that's what being a disciple is about. That's what Krishna consciousness is about. That's what yoga means. What's the ultimate connection? The ultimate connection is love. That's what really connects. But spiritual love is different than that emotion or sentiment that we're used to connecting this word love here in the world. And as that love develops and it works with the spiritual master and through the spiritual master to God, then naturally so many wonderful personal interactions, rewarding personal interactions are there, along with whatever else that one needs to do.
And the last question is, it has been touched on, but this is what I wanted in the end. What practical advice would you give to yoga teachers or listeners how to be a good teacher?
Our yoga teachers, potential yoga teachers, are very fortunate. They came to the right place. We don't sell second-grade products over here. This is only diamond merchants here. We just give the quality goods, and it's not everybody who's here, and not necessarily everyone who's willing to pay the price of being here. I don't mean the entrance fee. I mean being willing to accept that. So coming to Bhaktivedanta College is good karma, and more than just good karma. So let's say be really open to what you're going to hear, particularly as I mentioned in the line of what the truth is. The asanas you can learn anywhere, but what comes along with the asanas, and that is the teachings, the understanding, and what the teachers themselves actually have to give, you can't get anywhere. So it's a wonderful combination, and I would advise embracing that combination, staying with it, and then and then put to practice in your life, which is very important. You have to actually become it. You have to know who Krishna is. Ultimately, of course, we haven't mentioned so much, but it comes through chanting. The chanting becomes a real integral part of yoga, because nasti eva, nasti eva, nasti eva, which means that there's no way that any other yoga system, whether it's karma yoga or hatha yoga or jnana yoga, is going to do anything else other than elevate someone materially, but they're not going to bring them into the spiritual platform. It requires Harinam, Harinam. So why are you here? I'm just saying, why are you here, not whether you shouldn't be here, but why of all places are you here? Why did fate or circumstances bring you here? Because you should avail yourself of that which is here. And then if you really do in a very serious way, then you become very wealthy. Don't expect from your disciples what you're not going to do yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for sharing your valuable experiences and your wisdom and realizations.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Very helpful.
See you around.
And I hope it's been a very nurturing experience for all of you listeners, both as students and as prospective teachers. Hare Krishna.
Jai Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai.
Jai.
És akkor nem volt olyan hosszú.